नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतां स्वकथकृष्णः पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनः हृदयन्तोऽस्ति भद्राणि विदुनोति सुहृत्सताम्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवति उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Hare Krishna. So we are continuing our discussion of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And the previous session, we concluded chapter 11. And in this session, we're going to be doing chapter 12. Now, what is important for us to understand is that chapter 12 is entitled Birth of Emperor Parikshit. So there is a certain sequence here. The sequence itself is that we noticed in the previous chapters that the war had ended. We noticed also in the previous chapters that there was an attack on Mother Uttara by Ashwatthama. Krishna intervenes and he saves Parikshit Maharaj, who is in the womb of Mother Uttara. And then there is a sequence of the teachings of Bhishma Dev, and then there is a sequence of Krishna leaving for Dwaraka. Now, this chapter begins with the devotees who are listening to Srimad Bhagavatam from Sutta Goswami. One of the personalities who is listening to Srimad Bhagavatam from Sutta Goswami is Shaunaka Rishi. Now we have to understand that Srimad Bhagavatam was first spoken in the assembly that included Maharaj Parikshit. That was before his departure to the spiritual sky. After it was first shared with Maharaj Parikshit in the small assembly, one of the participants in that assembly was Sutta Goswami. So now he heard the narration during the inception where Sukadev Goswami is sharing the Bhagavatam with the audience. The audience was somewhat of a smaller audience with Parikshit Maharaj. And the Bhagavatam is being recited as by Sukadev Goswami himself. Now, one of the participants is Sutta Goswami. He hears Bhagavatam in that assembly. And then at the beginning of Kali, there is a large gathering in Naimisharanya. And Naimisharanya is basically, it is considered to be the pivot, or I would say the center of the whole material creation by certain calculations. In other words, they have certain calculations by which they have arrived at the most auspicious center. Now, this assembly is occurring in Naimisharanya, and it is occurring at the junction of the beginning of Kali. And as a consequence, one is understanding very well that because it is occurring in the core of Naimisharanya, where the whole material universe is going to be influenced because of the participation and the auspiciousness that is occurring there, one understands that the location was very strategic. It was very strategically chosen, and because it could disperse its effects, the positivity of spiritual energy and opportunity across the globe, because it was centered. It was also somewhat of a very critical, I would say, movement, because you were ending a cycle and you are beginning a new one. When you're at the junction of ending a cycle and you're beginning a new one, whatever you do at that particular junction can have its influence and can pervade the future. So this was chosen, and this is the reason why in our day, we begin our day during Brahma Muhurta, because the junction of the night and the junction of the day, which is following, is the Brahma Muhurta. It's practically 1.5 hours before sunrise. So you basically get an opportunity to influence the day very effectively if you were to perform pure devotional service in that particular junction. So that's the reason why it's critical to do the morning program, because the morning program can pervade and it can influence the whole day. It also is very influential because the Eastern tradition, which is the Vedic tradition, there's a tradition of knowing which particular day of the year is going to start the subsequent year. For example, if someone is, let's say, 20 years old, then they're going from 20 to 21, and there might be a particular day in the year when this transition occurs. It's not necessarily the English birthday. For example, the 1st of January, if someone is born on the 1st of January 20 years back, that is necessarily not the actual date of birth in this particular year, because the modern calculation, which is based on the Christian calculation, which starts from Jesus Christ's appearance on the planet, it does not account for changes that occur over a period of time. So over a period of time, there are mathematical precisions where changes can occur, due to which the particular day which you are born in at that point in time and could be very different from the day you were born in this particular day if you were to simply look at the Western calendar. As a consequence, the calendar in the Vedic times adapted to the changes of the universe, the changes of time, changes in the movements of different bodies in the sky, and they arrive at different times when this occurs. This is a reason why we find that sometimes Gaur Purnima occurs on a certain day, and the subsequent year it is a different day. Janmashtami changes, quite often. The point we are trying to make is we adapt to a very dynamic calendar, and in the dynamic calendar, the beginning of the year becomes very, very important because it can influence the entire year ahead. It's actually quite critical because it can influence the entire year ahead. So if you take the same principle of introducing Srimad Bhagavatam during the beginning of Kali at an auspicious spot, which is quite strategic in its choice, which was the whole idea was to influence future generations in a positive way and for it to carry forward and change the course of Kali, then you also have the beginning of Kali being taken as a time period where to influence this. Then we talked about the fact that the beginning of the day, Brahma Muhurta, which is the morning program time, is so critical because the activity that we do then has the capacity to pervade the entire day. Similar fashion, the activity done at the beginning of the year can influence the whole year if you know which day it is. So there is basically so much science involved in just this choice. It is everything that is being done here is so scientific in terms of the choice, in terms of when to do and where to do, etc., that it is just fascinating to see that everything is being accounted for. They are accounting for the creative aspects. They are accounting for the laws created by the Lord during the process of creation, the laws created where the demigods are following certain principles and managing the universe. Everything is being accounted for, even when releasing such an important scripture back into the sphere. You see, Srimad Bhagavatam is eternal. This is Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam has been spoken many, many times, millions of times over a period of time, because this is eternal. Krishna's Leela is occurring all the time. There are earthly planets in this creation where this Leela is occurring. Gaur Leela perhaps is occurring. The point which we are trying to make is that this is not the first time Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken. However, in this particular yuga, it's being perceived as the first time. It's being strategically introduced. So this particular chapter has a lot of mention about new beginnings. It has a lot of mention about being connected to Krishna and new beginnings. The auspiciousness of just being connected to Krishna and the protection that comes from being connected to Krishna and new beginnings. There's a wealth of information on this whole concept of being born. What is interesting as we look at the chapter is that Parikshit Maharaj suffered such a heavy blow even before he was born. In other words, his future and what was to happen to him was decided at the time of conception. Very critical. At the time of conception of the child within the womb of the mother, conception is called Garbha Adana. We normally use the word Garbhadana as one word, but in reality it is Garbha, which is womb, and Adana is the impacting of the womb by the fertilized egg. So the whole fetus being impacted into the womb of the mother. That is Adana, Garbha Adana. So the Garbha Adana, the time chosen for Garbha Adana practically influences the child's experience throughout life. It's being shown here. because the time conceived basically allowed Parikshit Maharaj to be protected. In other words, if that was his experience, he came out completely unscathed. There was no influence of the Brahmastra weapon because Krishna intervened. So there was so much which is being shared here in terms of beginnings. There's so much which is being shared here in terms of influence of time. There's so much which is being shared here in terms of, even though time influences adversely, because Krishna is involved, there's a complete shift that is occurring where the future is modified because Krishna chooses to say that, yes, the Brahmastra weapon is so powerful that it can destroy the entire creation, but I will stand before that weapon and my devotee. Even if that weapon is released, and even if the rules of the universe dictate that that weapon can cause such massive destruction, I will stand before my devotee and that weapon. I will protect my devotee even from such a heavy use of weapon. So this is so fascinating to see in terms of encouragement, because no one is more helpless than a child in the womb. No one is. Yeah? Because it can't move. It's completely at the mercy of the mother's situation. There's very little room for it to move. It's completely constricted and within the womb of the mother. So at that point in time, it's very helpless. In a state of helplessness, the child is being protected by the influence of time, by Krishna himself. Who can avert time? Krishna can avert time. Time is an expansion of Krishna. It is one of the aspects of how the material universe functions. It is a feature of Krishna, where Krishna says, I am time. You have to recognize me as time, because if you're an atheist and you don't believe in my existence as the personality of Godhead, you will have to believe my existence as a power which does not allow you to take complete control of your life. See, who can win over death? Death can't be won over. This is the time factor. An atheist has to experience death as well. An atheist who doesn't believe in the existence of the Supreme has to experience the time feature. Krishna basically can protect one from Kala, who is his feature. The feature of destruction, Kala, is manifested in the material universe, and that is Krishna's feature of destruction. So there really isn't a situation where Krishna can't control. So here's this whole situation where Parikshit Maharaj is being attacked by the Brahmastra, which means his destiny started at conception. Not every child goes through a circumstance of being attacked in the womb by a Brahmastra. Not every child has the opportunity to have a vision of the Lord whilst being in the womb. The Lord appears when Parikshit Maharaj is attacked. It is said here in one of the verses we're going to read, the Lord had 4 arms. He was brilliant like the blackish clouds. He was wearing a golden helmet. He was wearing a lightning-colored, pitambara-colored dhoti, garment, and a club. His club, his gada, his mace, it was circulating, and he was described as being furious because the child is being attacked. If a child is being attacked, the Lord is furious because the devotee child. So you can see his eyes are very reddish because of the furious nature. His anger is intense because he is protecting the child. He is ready for protecting the child. It is also said that Parikshit Maharaj, when he was in the womb, it is said in the first verse of this chapter that his mother, Uttara, her womb was destroyed, inconvenienced, it was traumatized. The womb was traumatized, by the weapon, but the child was safe, which essentially means that the child could have also been traumatized, but Krishna practically restored the child and did not allow the child to have any kind of dysfunction because of the attack. Because sometimes if there is trauma during pregnancies, then the child goes through a lot of trauma as well. But in this situation, we find that even though the child went through trauma, one can't really say that the heat did not harm Parikshit. Parikshit Maharaj experienced intense heat because of the Brahmastra. That could have dissolved the entire creation. It could have definitely dissolved the unborn child within the womb of Mother Uttara, because the womb is being traumatized. Bhagavatam says the womb was traumatized, it was destroyed. So the womb was destroyed, the child wasn't. because Krishna chose to protect. So Krishna chooses to protect, no one can kill, no matter how powerful the weapon. If Krishna chooses not to protect, then no one can protect. This is a fundamental fact which is being also shared here. So several factors. Number one, life begins at conception. The Garbha Adhana ceremony has the capacity to protect the child, provided it is done with the consciousness of Krishna being involved, which is the whole idea. All our samskaras in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, we involve Krishna. We involve Krishna even though the factor that we are doing is basically somewhat of a material act, if you were to compare the fact that many others are also begetting progeny. Many others are also engaging in the act of procreation. So what is different? The difference is that we are involving Krishna. Because we are involving Krishna in the whole aspect of taking his shelter, there are steps that are being undertaken by the devotees when they conceive. And as a consequence, Krishna is invoked right from the inception, right from the beginning, because we are sharing our intention. Krishna, we want you to be a part of this child's life. We want you to be a part of the future of this soul. As a consequence, we bring Krishna into the picture. Even if there is an apparently material endeavor, Krishna is being involved, and as a consequence, it becomes spiritual. The offering becomes spiritual. So it does not have a bad effect in terms of the parents engaging in that particular action of begetting progeny. It does not influence the parents negatively. Neither does it influence, and so is the case that it influences a child very positively. So this is so important for us to understand that conception is the beginning. It's right at the beginning, and that's called adhana. Adhana means the impacting. Impacting of the fertilized egg on the womb of the mother is adhana. Garbha adhana means that. It is the impacting. So we stop there. Our journey begins there. This is quite critical. It does not begin when we are born into this universe. It begins at the time of conception. And since it begins at the time of conception, whatever begins at the time of conception, the modifications, etc., all of this was also dependent on when conception took place. Yeah. So the point we are trying to make is just as much as the beginning of Kali, there's auspiciousness because Krishna's Leela is being discussed. There's great auspiciousness because Srimad Bhagavatam is being invoked right at the beginning of Kali. So Kali can be made auspicious because this particular age, even though it's inauspicious because of so many different issues. You see, if you were to study, we are now in 2019. Next year is the 2020 presidential election in America. And if you were to study the issues that are being discussed in the presidential debates, they are talking about a lack of security. They are afraid that they are spending too much time fighting. They're talking about the lack of availability of proper facilities for taking care of the body. So practically, if you study 2020 election manifesto in America, which is, I would say, the richest in one way, in the sense they are most fortunate because they have a land which is very, very well secured in so many different ways. They have plenty in that sense. They have misused it, but there's a lot which is available in America compared to any other place. Now, what is the issue which is being discussed in the presidential debate in 2020? They are talking about eating, sleeping, mating, defending. They are just talking about eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So the so-called advances of science over the past century have not modified the nature and the quality of what human race can experience in eating, mating, sleeping, defending. Even in 2019, the presidential debate has this whole section where they're discussing that we haven't really done a good job in eating, sleeping, mating, defending. This is advancement. This is advancement because if you're going to bring up eating, sleeping, mating, defending year after year, it means that you have not accomplished anything. Despite a 100% focus, by leadership in trying to make an improvement, they have not succeeded. Otherwise, why would you be discussing this again and again? Why should there be a need for you to discuss eating, sleeping, mating, defending if you already made all the arrangements nicely? So the point being is that you would always see the material world focusing on eating, sleeping, mating, defending. You would always see that. There's going to be no change, regardless of how you live, where you live, how many years. This issue of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, or I would say protecting and securing, is going to be there. It's just going to be a part of this world. And it is fascinating to see that no changes have occurred. They're keeping this as the top agenda. And every 4 years, as the US government gets re-elected, the president comes back. There's a huge discussion on eating, sleeping, mating, defending, which is just fascinating to see because they're claiming so many advances. And if you're claiming so many advances, then why is it that you're not able to resolve basic issues? These are basic issues. Yeah, these are very basic issues. They're constantly discussing this because it is endless. So in this context, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the Guru Maharaj of Srila Prabhupada, when the Indian freedom movement was gaining maximum impetus, at that time, he conducted a lot of spiritual events in the different ashrams. There was a lot of criticism coming in from the freedom fighters of India of those days on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, saying, why are you engaging resources and time in this so-called worship of deities, etc., etc., why is it that so many different arrangements are being made for elaborate worship of deities, etc., when we are going through such a big struggle? Shouldn't you be putting the energy that you have, the resources you have, into the freedom movement? His answer was, this is not going to change. You're going to be constantly fighting for freedom. You're constantly going to be fighting for eating, sleeping, mating, defending, regardless of the arrangement that you make. This is the truth. So as a consequence, the point we are trying to make here is that when we involve Krishna in activity which is supposedly mundane, then it becomes spiritual. It gives us a path forward, and arrangements that are being made for the future become very auspicious. So this is so critical for us to keep Krishna in the center, even when we are planning life. This is the whole purpose of Krishna consciousness, is to function with Krishna in the center. What is it which is going to allow me to keep Krishna in the center? How do I plan in such a way that I plan for bhakti first? When I plan for bhakti first, you immediately have Krishna on your side. As a consequence, everything else you want to do is being intelligently given by Krishna. So what is happening here? If you keep a goal which is Krishna-centered, it becomes Krishna's responsibility to influence us. The more you are Krishna conscious, the greater the Krishna consciousness in a person, greater the ability to receive intelligence from Krishna. This is being discussed in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. This is Buddhi Yoga. The extent to which Krishna consciousness is present, to that extent Krishna is going to be guiding us at every step. It is confirmed several times in all scriptures. So what is important here is for us to understand that auspicious beginnings have to include Krishna. There really isn't anything auspicious if you don't include Krishna, because otherwise you're just going to be creating a scenario which is going to necessarily repeat itself, which is what we're observing. Yeah, we're observing this phenomenon in the world where it is constantly repeating itself. Now you notice here that this is a devotee child. This child is a devotee child. What is happening here? Right from inception, this child is being protected by Krishna. Krishna enters into the womb. He enters into the womb, offers protection, modifies the future of the child, gives him an extraordinary experience, because Parikshit Maharaj, this basically is after the 7th month. Yeah, this is after the 7th month. Shastra says, and the 7th month, after the 7th month, there's full consciousness. There's a lot of consciousness which is available. There's awareness, I would use the word, in the child. Now the child is able to witness Krishna. Whilst being in the womb of the mother, the child is able to witness Krishna. The child is able to see that the Lord is the size of a thumb. He has a gada which is circulating around him, and he has 4 arms. The Lord is not massive. He is the size of a thumb. He is within the womb, so he has taken a size which is necessarily required for that circumstance. That does not make him less powerful. He has all the potency that he would have if he were to be lying on the causal ocean and universes were entering into the pores of his skin. So he is the size of a thumb, and he is protecting Parikshit Maharaj. And this is such a powerful experience for Parikshit Maharaj. Imagine seeing the Lord when your intelligence is yet to fully form. The deep, deep impression that would be caused by that vision would be permanently deposited in the consciousness of the devotee. So this was a benediction. So when Krishna is involved, an apparent calamity turns into a benediction. It becomes a pathway for the devotee to reach Krishna. As a consequence of the experience that was so powerful for Parikshit Maharaj, he had such a powerful experience as a baby, as an unborn child, whilst in the womb of his mother, that practically he had a vision of the Lord. He had a vision of the Lord. He had a vision of the Lord which he could never forget. So now this was Krishna consciousness right from inception. He could never forget that vision. It was so deeply ingrained in him. As a consequence, the attraction for Krishna had already begun in the womb. As a consequence, when he comes out into this world, he is only going to try and see where is that personality whom I saw. Because Krishna appears the size of a thumb. He disappears from vision. And when he disappears from vision, the devotee who sees him wants him back in their lives. They're looking for him. Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? This happened to Sri Narad Muni. Krishna appeared, gave his appearance, and then he disappeared from view. This happens to Parikshit Maharaj. Now, Parikshit Maharaj has seen something extraordinary. He's going to be searching for the particular personality who appeared before him. And as a consequence, his focus is going to be laser-like, because nothing about this world is going to impress him, because he has seen something quite extraordinary. Now, it's going to be confirmed by Shastra again and again. So this is quite a phenomenal situation. Krishna is being introduced. Now, whose responsibility is it to introduce Krishna? Yeah, Krishna's introduction is being done by his mother. Whom did she run to? When Ashwatthama was hurling the weapon, the Brahmastra at Uttara, Mother Uttara, whom did she run to? Did she run to Arjuna? She did not run to the Pandavas. She ran to Krishna. So the mother basically took shelter of Krishna, and consequently Krishna took charge of the entire birth experience. The entire birth experience was completely regulated and taken charge by Krishna. This is very powerful. This is very powerful for us to understand that samskaras that begin right at inception have an effect right through. Beginning of Kali, Srimad Bhagavatam is spoken, very auspicious throughout life. Then you have the beginning of the day, Srila Prabhupada's instructions for using the Brahma Muhurta very effectively. When you use the time of the Brahma Muhurta very effectively, it pervades the entire day. Having certain pujas done, for example, in a common tradition in India, is to get a puja done on the birthday. It's actually quite clever. It's clever because this is a mundane application. This is a mundane application. They are wanting certain results to occur positively. So this is fruitive activity, but it is clever. Why is it clever? Because they are basically trying to modify the year ahead by doing a strategic puja on a day of birth. So it's quite clever, because that happens, then the whole birth year becomes a little bit smooth. Yeah. So basically what we are trying to see here is the introduction of Krishna consciousness right at inception, even before being born, whilst the baby is in the womb. We are seeing that Krishna consciousness of the parents are going to influence the future of the child. We are seeing that the experience of birth is so distinct that life begins when there's a conception, and the events of conception can basically practically influence life as it moves forward. So there are so many different principles that are being shared here. And we are also going to read about different samskaras that are being performed. And these samskaras themselves are impressions. Samskara means impression. When a samskara is performed, there is an impression created in consciousness. When there's a samskara performed, there's an impression created in consciousness, where one is able to experience a certain kind of impression because of a samskara. And that impression can influence us if it is properly done to the extent to which possible, meaning if it is properly done where the priest is chanting mantras reasonably well, because one can't be an expert in the modern day. one can't be an expert. They should have enough powers to be able to chant mantras and invoke presence of deities. In the modern day, it's a bit of a challenge simply because of the fact that the priests may not be as advanced for them to be able to do so. And then you also have so many different things that can be done in terms of the auspiciousness that can be created during samskaras, which automatically create auspiciousness for the entire life. This is very important for us to understand. This is very, very important for us to understand. Now, the other part to it is, what if you are born with none of these samskaras? What if you're born with no samskara? Because there are many who have come to Krishna consciousness after the fact. So they may not be knowing that there was such a samskara which had to be done. They would not know that such a rite had to be done to bring an auspiciousness. So what if it was one of those situations? If that were to be the case, we are very safe because we have been given Harinam. Performing devotional service and dedicating ourselves to pure devotional service, planning our life with Krishna in the center, where we are trying to look and see how we can preserve Krishna consciousness. When you want to preserve Krishna consciousness, resources will come from Krishna. Mental resources for proper planning, mental resources for a proper thought process, the ability to take decisions which are prudent, which ultimately will result in Krishna consciousness. At least, at the very least, we would not harm our progress in spiritual life by taking a decision which apparently looks attractive from a mundane perspective. So keeping Krishna in the center is the most important theme, because then what happens is everything else basically evolves from there on. Now, in this particular chapter, we also notice that the whole arrangement for a devotee's life need not be auspicious from a material perspective. Please understand this. This is also very important. So, to finish the previous statement, what is it that you can do? Taking shelter of Nama. It can modify everything. All kinds of auspiciousness can come to those who dedicate themselves to the chanting of the holy names. If you dedicate yourself to the chanting of the holy names and take deep shelter of Nama, do not worry even if you haven't done the samskaras, because this would supersede any other puja, samskara, or auspiciousness that you could have ever done, because this is the Yuga Dharma. So in a relative scale, if one has done all the samskaras but does not chant Harinam, while someone has not done any samskara but is chanting Harinam, the latter, who is chanting Harinam, is more auspicious and more successful than the former. So we are not so much dependent on the samskaras by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. However, when you have something which is being given in tradition, understanding its importance and being able to implement it is also wise. If you know the signs of, looking for an auspicious time, muhurta, then look for it. If you do not know the signs of an auspicious time in terms of doing things, then chant Harinam, depend on Krishna, and beg for mercy from the Guru and Krishna so that one can do things in a proper way. So the point I'm trying to make is Bhakti Yoga can replace the other arrangements. Surrender can replace everything else. However, if you're knowledgeable, then doing everything nicely and also surrendering, that is the best arrangement. We read in Shastra about Srila Jiva Goswami. Srila Jiva Goswami, he sent Narottam Das Thakur and he sent Srinivas Acharya with the entire body of Krishna conscious literature from where they were to West Bengal to distribute the Krishna consciousness literature and for them to keep it in safe their hands, because there was some threat which was observed those days. It is said in Shastra that Srila Jiva Goswami looked for an auspicious time. What do you learn from this? Didn't Srila Jiva Goswami surrender to Mahamantra? Wasn't he surrendered? He was, absolutely. He was. He was a stalwart Acharya who has made arrangement for different generations to experience Harinam. He has written so many wonderful aspects and expansions of, elaborations on Srimad Bhagavatam and on the Mahamantra itself in such a way, in such a powerful way, that it has become the bedrock or the foundation for the other works that have followed him. So did he not know about surrender? He knew about surrender. He also had knowledge of being able to do things at the right way. So he basically looked for an auspicious time to send all the Gaudiya Vaishnava literature from where he was to Bengal through Srinivasacharya and Narottam Das Thakur. So they were using all of these particular sciences. They had knowledge of all of this, they were using it. So the point I'm trying to make is internally completely surrender to Harinam. Externally, if you have the ability to do things in a proper way according to the Vedic system, that's a very nice arrangement because it's just intelligent to take advantage of facilities. So doing samskaras and surrendering to Harinam is the best combination. If you're not doing that and you have no patience for anything, but you just have a deep attraction for Nama, that's wonderful. Please keep that going. This is what I'm trying to suggest here. So we are seeing a play between, a lot of ceremonies being done, and we're also seeing deep surrender. So this is proper because this basically says that I'll take advantage of what Krishna has provided in the world in terms of the samskaras, etc. I will also be deeply surrendered to Krishna. So this is perfect. Yeah. So let's read through the verses and we'll try and see how far we can go today in this chapter. It's chapter 12, Birth of Emperor Parikshit. Sri Shaunako Vacha Ashvatamano Pashretena Brahma Sishnoru Tejasa Uttaraya Hato Garbha Ishena Jivitaha Punaha. The sage Shaunaka said, the womb of Uttara, mother of Maharaj Parikshit, was spoiled by the dreadful and invincible Brahmastra weapon released by Ashwatthama. But Maharaj Parikshit was saved by the Supreme Lord. Tasya Janma Mahabuddhehe Karmanicha Mahatmanah Nidaram cha Yataivasit Sapretya Gatavan Yatah. How was the great Emperor Parikshit, who was a highly intelligent and great devotee, born in that womb? How did his death take place and what did he achieve after his death? Tadidam shrotum ichamo gaditum yadi manyase bruhinaha shraddadan nanam yasya jnanam adaschukah. We all respectfully want to hear about him, Maharaj Parikshit, to whom Sukadev Goswami imparted transcendental knowledge. Please speak on this matter. You know, how important is the personality of Maharaj Parikshit, where he is a part of Srimad Bhagavatam eternally. It's fascinating. Sutau vacha apipalad dharmarajah pitravad rajanyan prajah nispraha sarvakamebhyah Krishna padanusevaya. Sri Sutta Goswami said, Emperor Yudhishthira administered generously to everyone during his reign. He was exactly like a father. He had no personal ambition and was free from all sorts of sense gratification because of his continuous service onto the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna. Sampadaha kratavo loka mahishi brataro mahi jambu dvipadipatyam cha yasaschatra gatam. News even reached the celestial planets about Maharaj Yudhishthira's worldly possessions, the sacrifices by which he would attain a better destination, his queen, his stalwart brothers, his extensive land, his sovereignty over the planet Earth, and his fame, etc. Kim te kamah suraspraha mukunda manaso dvijah adijarur mudam rajnyah shuditasya yatettare. O Brahmanas, the opulence of the king was so enchanting that the denizens of heaven aspired for it. And because he was absorbed in the service of the Lord, nothing could satisfy him except the Lord's service. So even though Yudhishthira Maharaj was so extraordinarily well situated that his particular possessions as a king were talked about in the celestial planets, they are far, far more opulent. Lord Brahma's planet, which is Satyaloka, is almost like the spiritual sky. Lord Shiva's particular situation, so Lord Shiva's Dham, it is almost like the spiritual sky. So the point which you're trying to talk about is the celestial planets have facilities like the spiritual sky. But they were talking about Yudhishthira Maharaj's possessions because he basically was extraordinarily well situated. He had, he had an extraordinarily, I would say, powerful company, which included his wife and his brothers and all kinds of opulences, which the kingdom had to have. This was being spoken of. But it is being said here, because he was a devotee, he was not influenced by that to the least. He was not influenced at all because he was not impressed, he was not eager, he was not influenced at all by what he had, and he was unaffected because he had rendered pure devotional service. See, there is a particular problem which devotees face. The particular problem which devotees face is they can't visualize, because of a lack of experience, they can't really visualize the happiness that comes from pure devotional service. When we enter into devotional service, we start observing the principles, which is the regulative principles, which essentially means that there is no sense gratification. And once there is no sense gratification, they start doing what they have to do in terms of their sadhana, etc., and service. But if they're not sincere about the sadhana, if a devotee is not sincere about nama, sincere about sadhana, sincere in their hearts about endeavoring, meaning asking for it inside and acting according to what is required outside as well. Both should be matching. It is not that inside there's a lot of garbage and then externally they're pretending to be doing certain things in devotional service. Now, the point which you're trying to make is once you have given up everything that has to be given up which are problematic, and then you start proceeding in devotional service, if you don't take devotional service seriously, devotees basically feel quite stuck because their sense of pleasure was with the senses. That is being restricted in certain ways now. And they haven't really experienced what it is to be beyond that in terms of spiritual pleasure. They have experienced it, in bits and pieces here and there, but then the effort itself is not much. They're kind of coming in touch with devotional service and then going away. So as a consequence, there's a lot of disenchantment that occurs after a few years because people start thinking that this is not working for them. In reality, what is not working for devotees is the fact that they are not single-minded about this particular endeavor. If you're not going to be single-minded about anything you're doing, it's not going to get achieved. It's a fact of life. If you're not going to be single-minded about any endeavor that you've taken up, it is not going to work. So since we don't have the single-mindedness in pursuing devotional service, we get stuck in between. We're saying, oh, I stopped all of this, what I used to do before, thinking that was happiness. Now I'm not really doing what I'm supposed to do properly to go further. So I feel quite trapped in between. So this is the issue. The issue is we just do not know. Can everyone put yourself on mute, please? Because I basically can hear some static and it's getting in the way. Please check your mics and your speakers, please. Put yourself on mute. So the point which we're trying to make here is that it basically is a circumstance where people are endeavoring, but at the same time they feel quite disenchanted. That is the reason why we need Sangha. If we have Sangha, then there's an opportunity to meet those who are spiritually advanced, and they can basically share their faith into our hearts. If we do not have proper Sangha, if we do not have proper association, and if we do not have a proper understanding of how things ought to be in terms of day-to-day activities for Krishna consciousness, if there isn't a single-minded focus on trying to achieve things, then this is an endeavor where people can feel quite disenchanted. Sometimes they might say that I've spent 10 years, 15 years, I've chanted, I've served, I've attended Mangalarti, but Krishna, where's the happiness? Yeah, then they start looking for what to do in this world to make themselves happy. This is basically very sad. This is very sad. I'm speaking out openly, drawing attention to the elephant in the room, as we would call it. Everybody knows there's an elephant in the room, but they don't want to talk about it. Yeah, this is the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is being seen. The problem is that you're taking up devotional service. We don't put in 100% effort. We don't dedicate ourselves. If there isn't a single-minded devotion and focus on it, then, and we've given up all kinds of sense gratification because we're following regulative principles, we are going to feel a little bit lost. So the suggestion is that you come into something extraordinarily auspicious. Keep it as a single-minded objective in life. Start planning and desiring life based on that single-minded objective. This is what anybody would do. If they have an objective such as lofty as what we have, you would start planning and going towards it. So when we read in this verse and several other verses that he had opulences, Yudhishthira Maharaj, which were equal to the opulences of the celestial planets. He had opulences where the people in the celestial planets were talking about what he had, but he wasn't attached because he was purified. It is difficult for many of us to conceive of such a situation. Why? Because we haven't really experienced the spiritual happiness which he is experiencing. It is unfortunate, but it is true. It is true. We have to address it. We have to address it and understand that Krishna consciousness has to be approached as a single-minded feature, because it is one of the most loftiest, I would say the most loftiest, highest goal one can ever aspire for as a living entity. You're wanting to go and play with Krishna. You're wanting to interact with the origin of all the avatars. You're wanting to interact with him as if you would interact with someone who is very close to you. This is your lofty objective. This is the opportunity as well. It requires complete single-minded dedication because it is not easy. Why? Because the goal is so lofty. Why would it be easy? Haven't we read in scriptures in the Ramayana and Mahabharata? You read them all the time. The demons go away and they perform all kinds of austerities to obtain things which are distinctly material. Enormous effort. Enormous effort. So why would this, which is far, far more superior to anything conceivable by anyone material, be easy? It is easy in the sense that if you follow what is needed to be followed, it is easy. You progress. You make progress. And we have all experienced this. We have experienced milestones. We have experienced progress. We have experienced a different grade of happiness. We have experienced a change in taste. But this requires single-minded devotion. And when I'm saying single-minded devotion, I'm literally saying keep Krishna in the center. Keep Krishna in the center and plan your life around him, because that is what we are supposed to do. And that is why we can't conceive of what this happiness is, where he has everything, but he doesn't want it because he has experienced something superior. It is the case. There is something so far, so superior to anything that can be done in this world that you can reject it purely because you're experiencing something. What are we talking about here? We are talking about experiencing something higher. We are not talking about the negation of pleasure. We are pleasure seekers by nature. We are pleasure seekers by nature. So we can't really say that if I were to aspire for a certain kind of happiness, it is wrong. It isn't, because we are pleasure seekers by nature. What is unnatural is if you don't want any of that. Yeah? But because we are pleasure seekers by nature, as we go further and further in Krishna consciousness, there ought to be greater and greater happiness. The beauty about Krishna consciousness is the lower grade happiness gets replaced by the higher grade happiness. If it is done properly, the lower grade happiness gets replaced by the higher grade happiness. Param drishtva nivartate. We constantly modify our nature as we move forward in Krishna consciousness. Every day as you attend the morning program, every day as you stand before our deities, every day when there's chanting of Harinam, every day when our hands hold Srimad Bhagavatam and we are meditating on the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, every day we are being modified, our consciousness is being modified. And this is basically refining our sense of pleasure. And when it is refining our sense of pleasure, we basically are giving up something of a lower nature and adapting something of a higher nature. We are not giving up pleasure. We are not giving up pleasure. We are giving up something of a lower nature and we are adapting to something of a higher nature. This is the truth, because we are not we are not innate. We are not basically inert, matter where we can simply say that I'm not interested in happiness. We are looking for happiness. It's a birthright because we are pleasure seekers by nature. This is what we do. Now we have modified our taste and we're trying to move forward. As we modify our taste and we do what is necessary to experience the higher, there is a grade of happiness that comes when you experience the higher. That grade of happiness has the ability to completely overwhelm whatever is being offered in this plane. But that requires effort, that requires a focus, and this is common sense. This is common sense. Why is it common sense? Because it is something which is very natural, that if you want to attain something higher, you're going to need a higher level of effort, higher level of endeavor. You can't really get something which is supremely high with minimal endeavor. It doesn't work in the material world. Why would it work in the spiritual sky? Why would minimal effort, mediocrity work in the spiritual path if it doesn't work in the day-to-day activities that we do? If you're going to be mediocre, we are not going to be recognized. Why would this particular phenomenon of wanting to put in mediocre results, mediocre effort, why would it work when you're trying to have such a lofty goal of wanting to come in touch and hold Krishna's hands? He is the origin of all the avatars. He is the origin. He is not an avatar. He is the origin of all the avatars. Everything is contained within him. Why would that occur easily? So this is something which is a very important lesson when you're reading this, because we would read it again and again in Srimad Bhagavatam, that someone rejected the so-called opulence of this world and they went towards spirituality. And we understand it as an austerity, unfortunately. When we read this, in our mind, it is he is performing austerities. There's a transformation that is occurring here. It's a fact, because we can't really conceive of what it is. But in reality, he literally has no taste. The pleasure from this world is imperceptible. This is very frightening to a materialist. When they hear about Krishna consciousness, a materialist gets quite shaken, because when they hear that you're not going to experience the pleasures of this world, you would have no interest. They get very frightened, because this is all they know in terms of the quantity of happiness. In reality, there is a grade of happiness, spiritual happiness, which comes, which will make anything and everything in this world appear to be a complete insignificant occurrence. In prema, in bhava and prema, in higher planes of Krishna consciousness, the pleasure from this world is imperceptible. One in the stage even of bhava can recognize that there is stimulus in the environment. So there is stimulus in the entire environment, and because of the stimulus in the material environment, one's senses could be drawn towards that stimulus. There's some perception that it is possible at an advanced stage, but not prema. But once you reach the higher stages of bhava and prema, there is not even the perception that something can be a source of pleasure. There is no pleasure or no sense of perception. But how could that state of no perception be considered to be normal? Because that is the problem with us, we can't understand it. It's frightening to say that I would not be having any interest whatsoever in this world, and yet I will be happy, because we can't conceive of it. People run away. In reality, they're running away from something which is extraordinary. There's great pleasure, and the quality of happiness from that particular aspect can dwarf and can make the pleasure of this world minuscule. We are constantly being reminded of it when we read Srimad Bhagavatam. This is very important for us to understand, because we read this in austerity. Yudhishthira Maharaj is performing austerities. Deep down, the understanding would come. But at the same time, what I'm trying to say is, he is not performing any austerity. He isn't. He has developed a higher taste. Because he has developed a higher taste, this particular world and what it has to offer has become imperceptible. So that's something which we have to understand is a milestone. It is documented and it is recorded and has been experienced by everyone who is sincere. So this is a milestone. It is not fiction. It is not inconceivable. Please remember that we're not talking fiction here. These are real experiences. That's what Srimad Bhagavatam is. This is a real experience. The opulence of the king was so enchanting that the denizens of heaven aspired for it, which means the denizens of heaven were not devotees. They were engaging in sense gratification. They were devotees, but they were not pure devotees, as Yudhishthira Maharaj. But because he was absorbed in the service of the Lord, nothing could satisfy him except the Lord's service. Nothing could satisfy him. It's a fact. We read that Lord Balaram, who is the first expansion from Krishna, engages in the rasa dance. The fact is, Lord Balaram, the first expansion from Krishna, has no pleasure other than serving Krishna. This is a fact. If Lord Balaram, the first expansion from Krishna, has no pleasure other than wanting to serve Krishna, and that's where his happiness is, what to say of us, we are jivas? This is the definition. So he does the rasa dance, yes, like Krishna does. He has his own entourage. He can't be happy. Similarly, Yudhishthira Maharaj, even though he was absorbed in the service of the Lord, nothing could satisfy him except the Lord's service. Yeah, because he was absorbed in that. Now let's go on to text 7. O son of Bhrigu, Shaunaka, when the child Parikshit, the great fighter, was in the womb of his mother Uttara and was suffering from the burning heat of the Brahmastra thrown by Ashwatthama, he could observe the Supreme Lord coming to him. Parikshit Maharaj was conscious enough to see the Supreme Lord coming towards him. He, the Lord, was only a thumb high, but he was all transcendental. He had very beautiful blackish infallible body, and he wore a dress of lightning yellow and a helmet of blazing gold. Thus he was seen by the child. The Lord was enriched with 4 hands, earrings of molten gold, and eyes blood red with fury. As he loitered about, his club constantly encircled him like a shooting star. So this was the Lord. The anger, he was extraordinarily angry because the devotee was being attacked. The Lord was thus engaged in vanquishing the radiation of the Brahmastra, just as the sun evaporates a drop of dew. The biggest and the most powerful weapon in the material universe is compared to the power of the sun evaporating a drop of dew. Yeah? He was observed by the child who thought about who he was. Whilst thus being observed by the child, the Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead, the super soul of everyone, and the protector of the righteous at once disappeared, although he is dressed by all directions, is unlimited by time and space. So he disappeared from the view of Parikshit Maharaj. Thereupon, when all the good signs of the zodiac gradually evolved, the heir apparent of Pandu, who would be exactly like him in prowess, took birth. So Parikshit Maharaj appeared when the planetary bodies in the sky were properly positioned in such a way that it was an all-auspicious arrangement. In other words, someone like him who is supposed to herald the future of the Yuga and who is supposed to be such a great devotee that he invokes the presence of the Bhagavatam. He basically is seen listening to the Srimad Bhagavatam. So basically that's his whole service. He's demonstrating 2 things. What is being demonstrated by him? He is demonstrating the power of Shravanam. Sukadev Goswami is demonstrating the power of Kirtanam. He is chanting the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Kirtan. Glorifying Krishna is Kirtan. Hearing Shravanam is being demonstrated by Parikshit Maharaj. If you do any one of these activities perfectly, then the end is auspicious, because the most auspicious you attain Krishna. That is being demonstrated here as well. So when such a personality who is going to demonstrate the auspiciousness of hearing, and hearing being the source of liberation, his time of birth and the time when he is going to be born is going to be very auspicious, because of his appearance in our lives, our births have become auspicious. When we talk about Parikshit, we literally are talking about, modifying our future, because he is establishing Srimad Bhagavatam in our hearts by listening to it. Parikshit is such an important personality. And when such a personality needs to come into this world, he will appear at a time when it is most auspicious. King Yudhishthira, who was very satisfied with the birth of Maharaj Parikshit, had the purificatory process of birth performed by learned brahmanas, headed by Daumya and Kripa, along with the recitation of auspicious hymns. So, the first ceremony after a child is being born is Jatakarma. There are so many different ceremonies which are coming. There are 32 different samskaras. Marriage being one samskara. So all of these are being performed, but then the beginning, when the child is born, there are certain activities, and that is being performed by very qualified priests. Daumya is the priest of the Pandavas. Kripacharya is the priest of the Kuru dynasty. He also joins in being able to recite the hymns and to invoke the auspicious presence. Upon the birth of a son, the king, who knew how, where, and when charity should be given, gave gold, land, villages, elephants, horses, and good food grains to the Brahmanas. So there was a lot of charity which is being given when this great personality is being born, because this again is going to modify the child's future. When a very auspicious activity of gifting things to the Brahmanas is being done when the child is born, it modifies the child's future. The learned Brahmanas, who were very satisfied with the charities of the king, addressed him as the chief amongst the Purus and informed him that his son was certainly in the line of descent from the Purus. Yeah, there were several branches. Puru is one of the branches, and then the entire lineage which is coming in Maharaj Yudhishthira is a part of it, comes from Puru. So they are basically talking about this. The Brahmanas said, the spotless son has been restored by the all-powerful and all-pervasive Lord Vishnu, the personality of Godhead, in order to oblige you. He was saved when he was doomed to be destroyed by an irresistible supernatural weapon. The spotless son has been restored. So basically, when Parikshit Maharaj was in the womb of Mother Uttara, the womb was destroyed, which means that Parikshit Maharaj's body also suffered intensely. So that restoration was done by Krishna. He not only protected him from further damage, he also restored the baby, and the baby was born, with all auspicious signs, etc., even though it was almost impossible for the child to survive. For this reason, this child will be well known in the world as one who is protected by the personality of Godhead. Oh, most fortunate one, there is no doubt that this child will become a first-class devotee and will be qualified with all good qualities. The good king, Yudhishthira, inquired, O great souls, will he become saintly? Will he become as saintly a king, as pious in his very name, and as famous and glorified in his achievements as others who appear in this great royal family? The learned Brahmana said, O son of Pritha, this child shall be exactly like King Ikshwaku, the son of Manu, in maintaining all those who are born. Ikshwaku is the dynasty in which Lord Ramachandra appeared. And as for following the Brahminical principles, especially in being true to his promise, he shall be exactly like Rama, the personality of Godhead, the son of Maharaj Dasharatha. So these predictions are being made. The predictions on Parikshit's future are being made by the Brahmanas based on his birth chart. The birth chart, the astrological chart, is being used to make predictions of what is going to be the quality of this person. This child will be a munificent donor of charity and protector of the surrendered, like the famous King Shibi of the Ushinara country. And he will expand the name and fame of his family like Bharata, the son of Maharaj Dushyanta. So he comes in the lineage of Bharata as well. As a consequence, he would expand the fame of the family, like his ancestor. Amongst great bowmen, this child will be as good as Arjuna, as the Arjunas. They're actually talking about two Arjunas here. They're saying amongst great bowmen, this child will be as good as the Arjunas. So the first Arjuna is Kartavirya Arjuna. Kartavirya Arjuna was the one who basically is considered to be an incarnation of the Sudarshan Chakra. He was challenged by sage Parasuram, the Lord's incarnation. So there was a big battle. But then this Kartavirya Arjuna, he is also someone who is considered to be someone with 1,000 arms. His prowess in firing weapons was intense. In fact, in the televised account of Vishnu Puran, which we saw in YouTube, there are televised accounts of Vishnu Puran where great Parashuram's avatar is being described. Kartavirya Arjuna is being made to look like a very cheap politician of the modern day, which is not true. Kartavirya Arjuna, which is Sasra Arjun, he was so powerful, he had the ability to control the consciousness of his subjects. So when sage Parasuram, when the Lord appeared as Lord Parasuram, he killed Kartavirya Arjuna. And there was deep regret that was given and basically shared by his father Jamadagni. Parashuram's father, Lord Parashuram's father, Jamadagni, sage Jamadagni, when he heard that Parashuram had killed Arjuna, Kartavirya Arjuna, he expressed regret. So we have to depend on the account of the Bhagavatam to understand these great personalities. He was so powerful, this king, Kartavirya Arjuna, that he was basically managing his kingdom in such power that he could control the consciousness of his subjects. He was so powerful. He was so powerful. His senses themselves are so powerful. So there are certain incidents that occur which practically brought about the end of Kartavirya Arjuna at the hands of Lord Parashuram. However, Kartavirya Arjuna was as great as, I would say, the modern, the Arjuna who participated in Mahabharata. That is why both Arjunas are being mentioned here. He was great. So it's a somewhat of a, I would say, very a poorly done account in the serial. So we have to be very careful in understanding Shastra from modern day serials. We have to be very careful. Read Shastra, read Bhagavatam first, and then if there is a contradiction, go with Bhagavatam. This child will be as strong as a lion and as worthy a shelter as the Himalaya mountains. He will be forbearing like the earth and as tolerant as parents. As tolerant as parents. This child will be like his grandfather Yudhishthira or Brahma in equanimity of mind. He will be munificent like the Lord of Kailash Hill, Lord Shiva. And he will be the resort of everyone like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, who is even the shelter of the goddess of fortune. Why would someone become a resort of everyone? Because they have the capacity to protect. They have the capacity to give shelter, which is being described here. This child will be almost as good as Lord Krishna, Lord Sri Krishna, by following in his footsteps. In magnanimity, he will become as great as King Rantideva. And in religion, he will be like Maharaj Yayati. We will be reading about all of this further in Srimad Bhagavatam. This child will be like Bali Maharaj in patience, a staunch devotee of Lord Sri Krishna, like Prahalad Maharaj, a performer of many Ashwamedha sacrifices and a follower of the old and experienced men. This child will be the father of kings who will be like sages. For world peace and for the sake of religion, he will be the chastiser of the upstarts and the quarrelsome. So, you notice in the Bhagavatam, punishment standards in the Bhagavatam are very severe. Punishment standards for deviations in Bhagavatam are very severe. You notice kings raising arms, putting people to death because they transgressed certain rules and regulations. So why is it so? It's because you can't control the mode of ignorance by preaching. You can only control the mode of ignorance by punishment. People who are very deeply ingrained in the mode of ignorance, they get punished for their activities, and that's how they correct themselves. Yeah? So sometimes we have to understand that the great king, as saintly as he was, even though he was always looking for peaceful endeavor and he was searching for peace, he wasn't someone who could be somewhat of a passive personality even when there was a need for someone to be strict, which is what's being shown here. After hearing about his death, which will be caused by the bite of a snake bird sent by a son of a Brahmana, he will get himself freed from all material attachment and surrender onto the personality of Godhead, taking shelter of him. So that is the level of detail that they are sharing as to how death would occur and what would be the circumstances of death. After inquiring about proper self-knowledge from the great philosopher, son of Vyasadeva, Sukadev Goswami, he will renounce all material attachment and achieve a life of fearlessness. Attachment means fear. Renouncing material attachment means fearlessness. Thus, those who are expert in astrological knowledge and in performance of the birth ceremony instructed King Yudhishthira about the future history of the child. Thus, being sumptuously remunerated, they all returned to their respective homes. The child would become famous in the world as Parikshit. What is the meaning of Parikshit? Parikshit means examiner. Why is he called an examiner? Because he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a child, as a baby. Because he had a vision as a baby in the womb of his mother, he is constantly going to be looking for Krishna. So he's going to be examining each and everything and diligently asking, where is the personality whom I saw? I can't see him. So that's why he's being called Parikshit. The child would become famous in the world as Parikshit because he would come to examine all human beings in his search after that personality whom he saw before his birth. Thus, he would come to constantly contemplate him. As the moon in its waxing fortnight develops day after day, so the royal prince Parikshit very soon developed luxuriantly under the care and full facilities of his guardian grandfathers. The moon in the waxing fortnight. So the moon in the waxing fortnight, there is something called the new moon. Everybody knows the new moon. In Sanskrit, we call it Amavasya. It is the weakest on the day of Amavasya. So the moon is practically without light in the day of the Amavasya. Yeah, there's a complete obstruction of light from the moon on the day of Amavasya. The moon doesn't receive anything at the time. Then from Amavasya, the moon expands its ability and there's more and more light that comes on. It goes on till the full moon, which is Purnima. Yeah. So Amavasya is complete darkness. Purnima is complete light. So the evolution of spirituality is also such that from darkness one goes to light. So we call upon, for example, the appearance of Lord Gauranga. Whoever comes to preach, they appear on a Purnima. Gaura Purnima, Vyasa Purnima. These are Purnimas where the moon is shining so brightly that it can dissipate all kinds of distress that is being faced by humanity and can provide knowledge. So here they're comparing his ability to grow into a wonderful youth as the moon grows from a new moon which has no light to a full moon which is Purnima. It's luxuriant. Just at this time, King Yudhishthira was considered performing a horse sacrifice to get freed from sins incurred from fighting with kinsmen. But he became anxious to get some wealth, for there were no surplus funds outside of fines and tax collection. Understanding the hearty wishes of the king, his brothers, as advised by the infallible Lord Krishna, collected sufficient riches from the north. By those riches, the king could procure the ingredients for 3 horse sacrifices. Thus, the pious King Yudhishthira, who was very fearful after the battle of Kurukshetra, pleased Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead. Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, being invited to the sacrifices by Maharaj Yudhishthira, saw to it that they were performed by qualified twice-born brahmanas. After that, for the pleasure of the relatives, the Lord remained a few months. O Shaunaka, thereafter the Lord, having bidden farewell to King Yudhishthira, Draupadi, and other relatives, started for the city of Dwaraka, accompanied by Arjuna and members of the Yadu dynasty. So now they're connecting the previous chapters again. The previous chapter was Krishna entering Dwaraka and Krishna leaving for Dwaraka. Now in between, they were all wondering what happened to Parikshit. So the listeners were given an account of how Parikshit's birth was. And at the end of this chapter, they're connecting again to Krishna leaving for Dwaraka. So I'll stop here and we'll take any questions and comments. Any questions? Haribol, I can't hear you. Could you speak up, please?
Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Haribol? Yeah, I can hear you now. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. My question is that is related? Is there any record about that?
Could you post your question, Ravindra, on WhatsApp, because I can't hear you even now. Could you speak up a little bit?
Okay, it's a simple question, Prabhu. Is Parikshit Maharaj related to Krishna in his previous lives?
Is he related to Krishna in his previous lives? See, these are, in one sense, eternal devotees. They are devotees who are constantly being associated with the Lord. So in that sense, the point which you're trying to make is, even if his birth in this particular lifetime, where we are talking about it in Srimad Bhagavatam, once he reaches the spiritual sky, he is an eternal associate. Srimad Bhagavatam has been spoken so many times in so many different locations. One of the locations was when Parikshit Maharaj basically was listening from Sukadev Goswami. So the point being that whilst there isn't a direct mention of his past, he is eternally connected to Krishna because he's a part of the rendering of Srimad Bhagavatam in this planet. So I'm not answering your question directly, but I'm telling you that one is definitely had to be connected to Krishna from the past for him to play such an important role. The information as to who he was, I'm not clear. Perhaps there is in some other scripture, but I'm not 100% clear on that. And I'm merely saying that once you reach the spiritual sky, you are an eternal associate.
Hare Krishna. I was wondering, did Parikshit Maharaj spend time with Krishna like growing up, or was it only, or did he only see Krishna when he was in the womb?
Did Parikshit Maharaj spend time with Krishna?
Like growing up, or did he only
No.
see Krishna? Okay.
No, see, well, basically there was interaction. Obviously, there was interaction. There was interaction because he was growing up, and then Krishna was also there. Yeah, in Dwaraka. So there must have surely been interaction. So there's no question of not having interaction, because there would have been interaction. But the point I'm just trying to make is that there aren't, I would say, specific accounts which elaborate that. We can only make an inference.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Prabhuji, in this chapter it's mentioned that the deities are Krishna has manifested in the form of deities in material world to so that we can offer service to him. But just in case if we have some offenses unknowingly or just it happens, towards the deities, our home deities. So how can we ask for forgiveness?
Very good question. There is an elaborate account of offenses that can be committed to the deity, which is given by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. You can also find it towards the end of Harinam Chintamani, which describes the offenses and the qualities of the Nama. But one thing which we have to understand is the offenses of the committed in front of the deity, unknown offenses. Let's call it unknown offenses. Those offenses are completely nullified because of chanting Krishna's names. So when we chant sincerely, those offenses that are committed to the deities get nullified. The problem is when we commit Nama Aparad. The offense is committed to Nama because the most merciful is Krishna's name. The offense is committed elsewhere. They all get resolved when you chant nicely and do not commit offenses associated with chanting. Where would we go if we offend Krishna's names? Because Krishna's names have the ability to completely relieve us of the offenses committed to anything else which happens. So that is of greater concern. And there is a prayer. There are many prayers that are a part of formal worship of deities. And one of the prayers that we do is that we basically ask for forgiveness at the end. Unknown, whether I committed knowingly or unknowingly, I'm asking for forgiveness. So there are prayers associated with that as well. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Does Tulsi Aarti, if we perform Tulsi Aarti every day, does it help in this respect anyways?
Absolutely. Tulsi Maharani can particularly give us shelter, and without her shelter, one can't move forward. But the point I'm just trying to make is you can't really modify one offense by doing something else nicely. The only area which our acharyas have given where things can get modified nicely is when you chant sincerely. Because when you chant sincerely, Harinam has the ability to completely negate all the offenses that are committed in every other sphere, unknowingly, that is.
One thing more, Prabhuji, you told in your earlier lectures that if we perform chanting and um, Harinam carefully, that results in giving us our taste towards listening, hearing to Krishna Katha. So if we serve him properly, that gives us the taste towards listening Krishna Katha. But what happens if we are so involved, so much dedicated, and have so much taste in listening to Krishna Katha that we avoid taking services and we are more inclined towards listening? So is it offensive in any ways?
It is not. If that's your motivation, and if it is done nicely, if you're doing the part of listening to classes and wanting to basically absorb yourself, it would definitely result in positivity at some later stage in terms of chanting and service, etc. Because ultimately, when we listen, we are basically experiencing the faith of the listener. We are also experiencing a certain modification of desires which are occurring at a deep level. So when we are listening very sincerely, then we are going to have an experience of being able to be a better servant. So I would not really qualify it as being offensive. No, it is not offensive. So if your question is, I'm more interested in listening than anything else, that's fine too.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Sure.
Very
Any other question or comment?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Hari Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to express immense gratitude for all your valuable time. I thoroughly enjoyed, and your love for Krishna, I can feel it, and I can listen to you like all day. So I do listen to your lectures over and over again. So can't get enough. So I just wanted to tell you thank you so much, and we want to learn more and more from you.
I'm grateful.
And
Thank
one
you
question
for
from today's lecture, if there was a mention of forced sacrifices. So these things were done in those times.
sorry, I'm losing you because I can't hear the last statement. Can you repeat your last question, please?
Sorry, a horse sacrifice. There was a mention of Parikshit Maharaj or Yudhishthira Maharaj were doing horse sacrifice.
Right. Yes, this is the Ashwamedha Yagya, and during the past ages, Ashwamedha Yagya was considered to be an extraordinarily purificatory process if you had the means and the wealth to do so. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam that if you perform 100 Ashwamedha Yagyas, then you can qualify to become Brahma of the universe. So in that sense, what I'm saying is basically the Ashwamedha Yagya was a process of purification. If it were to be done nicely, it had the ability to purify the participants and the king. But it required very elaborate arrangements. And as a consequence, it was not to be done by someone who did not have the facilities. So you read about it during Ramayana, you read about it in the Mahabharata. It is a sacrifice which basically allows for purification of the king, and it allows for the ability to obtain the resources and the ability to be able to govern in such a way that they would be equivalent to the creator. That is how powerful the sacrifice was. But it is not something which is relevant at this age, because in this age the greatest sacrifice is the chanting of Harinam. There's no other sacrifice. If you want to bring rains from above, chant Harinam. There was this account given in by someone of Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj. He passed away in 2006, 2007. I don't remember which year. He was a wonderful devotee and a wonderful servant of Srila Prabhupada. There was this circumstance where in southern India, they were experiencing very, very serious drought because of a lack of rainfall. Yeah, very, very serious drought. And during that time, he basically gathered all the villages and he did Harinam. The moment he started Harinam, by the time 1 hour of Harinam was going on, there were downpours. So this is the yajna that has to be done in the modern day, the yajna of chanting of Harinam. Regardless of what you want to accomplish, Harinam's service is all that is required. In the previous ages, the elaborate sacrifices such as the Ashwamedha Yajna, etc., were done by kings to establish their supremacy and also for them to receive blessings, because that is how they evolved in their particular capacity as a soul who was governing the kingdom. Anything else?
Prabhuji.
Sure.
Thank you.
Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Jai Shri Prabhupada. This is Hema
Then all goes
Thank you so much for the enlightening session. I have been on and off attending your sessions due to something else going on. But Prabhuji, I have few questions. The transformation from one year to another, you were explaining this at the start of your session. I missed your few sentences probably. What is it, Prabhu? You were stressing on something like some few changes that occur from one year to another. It might not be an English year, but what's that, Prabhu?
Mataji, sorry, there were last parts of your question that I couldn't hear. Perhaps you are on speakerphone. Is there a possibility for you to speak a little bit more louder, please?
Am I audible now, Prabhuji?
This is very good. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. You were explaining few things about the transformation that happens even in this birth from one year to another. I missed those few sentences there, Prabhu. What is that exactly?
Transformations from one year to the other. See, I need to understand the context, because
Okay.
I was mentioning transformations in the context of samskaras that could be done, and then transformations occur. I was also talking about transformations where a devotee who is engaging in Harinam, who is doing Panchanga Bhakti, who is very serious and is very singular-minded and focused, they are experiencing transformations on a year-by-year basis where they are able to basically modify the desires to such an extent that they are losing taste for what is considered to be mundane, and they are developing a more refined and higher taste and sublime taste. So the point I was just wanting to make is that when one is gradually progressing and they're able to execute devotional service in a very nice way, there would be transformations that would occur each and every day as you chant, as you worship the deities, as you hear Bhagavatam, as you serve. These are transformations. So I was speaking about it in two different contexts. So I'm not sure which context you're referring to, unfortunately.
Probably what you were saying was the one, Prabhu. I'm not really sure because I was lost during the first, when you started the session, my internet connectivity was not so good. So I was lost there. That's okay, Prabhu. I'll re-listen your session. Anyhow, it will be shared, and again, I'll get back to you. And the second question is, Prabhuji, can I ask a second question, Prabhu? Is it okay?
Yeah, please go ahead, please. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You said that the demons, for their material pleasures, they are so strict and they perform so many so-called austerities to achieve their material pleasures. So, Prabhuji, is that like once they become so much austere, they develop a taste even for the higher consciousness, don't they, Prabhu? How should I take this? How should I understand this? Once they are there, again, they come to the on the demonic platform, doing all what are not recommended. So how should we understand that demonic, strict, austere conditions of sadhana? How should I understand that, Prabhu?
Well, see, here's the situation. Bhakti can be involved in the pursuit of fruitive activity, which is karma kanda, where one can worship a certain deity for the purpose of attaining certain goals. Then once you attain the goal, the deity is gone because the goal was always bigger than the deity. So in the demoniac conception, they could have worshipped Lord Shiva, they could worship Lord Brahma, they could do all of that, but they were always worshipping for the purpose of attaining something. So the attainment of something was always much bigger than the personality who was going to be worshipped and who was basically propitiated. As a consequence, the moment that particular gift was given, it was gone, finished. The connection is gone. That is first, number one explanation. Number two, there need not be any bhakti even. You could simply be performing austerities and experiencing such great austerity that in that context you can attain certain fruits. Yeah, you can attain fruits. So that is the other explanation, where the performance of austerities for attaining a certain favor can make one hard-hearted. Their heart can become very hard because they're going through a lot of hardship. And as a consequence, they don't have a change in consciousness. They simply attain it because there are certain rules. So for example, in the modern day, if you want to experience a higher, let us say, for example, you want to enter into the civil services here in India, for example, it's a very big deal. So people prepare very, very hard for the civil services and then they attain it. So in a similar manner, the universe has certain rules. If you want to attain the fruits of those rules, they say you have to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 experiences, then we would give you the fruit. So they are simply following that precept. Does that make sense? They are simply following a certain path which has already been given out, saying if you do this, you're going to get this. It doesn't modify consciousness. It's simply they put themselves through a lot of stress simply to attain it, just as much as any other materialist in this world goes through a lot of stress to attain material opulences. Yeah, they put themselves through a lot of stress and then they attain it. In a similar fashion, the demons also do it. But it does not modify the heart, because the heart becomes very hard because of the stress that they go through.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Prabhu. And one more last question, Prabhu. So the explanation of Krishna's appearance in the womb of Mother Uttara before Parikshit Maharaj, all this was Vyasadeva's vision and was explained to Parikshit Maharaj, and Suta Goswami explaining it to Saunaka Maharshi and other sages. Is that right, Prabhu? Is it the flow?
Yeah. It was Srila Vyasadeva's vision, which was explained by him to Sukadev Goswami. It was also corroborated because there were already people. So, for example, Parikshit Maharaj was present. He knew what he had gone through, so he was able to corroborate it. So there were multiple accounts of what the experiences were. So if Parikshit Maharaj was the only one who comes out of the womb, and when he becomes intelligent enough to speak, the children, when they reach the age of that, they can share, and he starts saying that I looked at Krishna and Krishna was in the womb, then no one probably would believe him. But because it is Vyasadeva who has written Shastra, then yes. This basically was believed. So there were personalities then. Krishna himself was present in that particular scenario, wasn't he? He was a grand uncle. Yeah, this Parikshit Maharaj was Abhimanyu's son. So there was no question of Parikshit Maharaj and Krishna not being in touch. So they were in touch, and Krishna corroborated it as well. So the point I'm trying to make is that the sequence of everything in Bhagavatam is Vyasadev to Sukadev Goswami, Sukadev Goswami to an assembly when Parikshit Maharaj was there. One of the people who participated in the assembly was Suta Goswami. Now from Suta Goswami in Naimisharanya, several years later, to everybody else. And all of this is being captured as Bhagavatam first.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for your very clear explanation. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Always proper. Okay, so there is a question from Sundari Sita Mataji. Basically, the question is it possible to become serious in Krishna consciousness and have single-minded focus in devotional service, being in the Grahasthashram, doing our daily activities, especially for Matajis? All the examples we see in scripture, only devotees who have renounced everything reach prema and bhava stage. It's absolutely possible. It is not limited. It is not limited to just devotees who are renounced and then who are doing everything outside. The point which we're trying to make is there are ample examples that are being given of devotees who have succeeded in the Chaitanya Charitamrita when Lord Chaitanya was present. Yeah, there were ample examples of Matajis who can do this. So there is no distinction, or there is no, I would say, gender bias in terms of having a certain kind of body which prevents us or being in a certain circumstance. However, single-minded focus requires arrangement of life in such a way that there can be single-minded focus. Everybody has to do their day-to-day duties, and the single-minded focus has to be there. So what is the single-minded focus? The single-minded focus is to desire to be 100% focused even when we don't have the opportunity. We have to ask for greater involvement in devotional service. Asking for greater involvement in devotional service would practically arrange the future for us where there will be 100% absorption in devotional service. If we don't ask for greater involvement in devotional service and we continue doing what we are doing on a day-to-day basis, then there will be benefits from this, because there is always spiritual credits that are being accumulated. In a subsequent lifetime, our life would be arranged in such a way that we are able to use all these credits and we are able to take off. So the point we are trying to make is, regardless of whether you can achieve things in this lifetime or the next, the endeavor itself is not a waste of time. But just as much as anything which is requiring success requires a single-minded focus, single-minded focus can be given and can be had by Matajis as well. In fact, Matajis, bhakti is an emotional state. Being conditioned by the body, ladies have an advantage. The heart is soft already because their conditioning is such that they're quite emotional. As a consequence, there can be a lot of evolution. So there is no disadvantage of being born in a woman's body, because we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, we are finding that these are all personalities who have renounced and who have gone away. Why have they renounced? Because their motivation was such that they found a higher taste. If our motivation on a daily basis is to be able to better absorb ourselves in Krishna consciousness, our future will get arranged and will give it opportunities for higher taste. This is very important for us to desire. So to answer your question, greater the amount of time spent in the day and complete absorption and having single-minded focus while taking care of other duties in life is what is expected. Life should arrange itself in such a way as the time goes by, because our future would also modify itself. So there should be desires for this. That's the point. So, for example, I'll give you this additional example. When my spiritual master, Sripad Bhaktitirtha Maharaj, he was departing for the spiritual sky. At that point in time, he was also managing ISKCON's activities in certain spheres of the world. He was a guru to so many of us. He was a Siksha guru to so many devotees. And there was so much activity which was going on. He had to withdraw himself slowly, steadily, and prepare for the departure. So there is a need for us also to constantly meditate on the fact that reducing our unwanted influence and unwanted engagement in the world and greater involvement in activities of bhakti is necessary and has to be planned for, and we have to attain it. It requires planning. But being in a woman's body is not a disadvantage. And our system does not depend on austerities, it depends on bhakti. You have heard of Mother Hladini? She was a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. According to the account given by my spiritual master, she was a Bhava Bhakta. She basically was advanced and she was entering into prema. She used to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and jump out of bed because she was so eager to chant. She was so surrendered that the deities in New Vrindavan, the Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra deities in New Vrindavan, they were under her. She practically used to do everything in the mood of intensity. When she used to cut vegetables, she would hang the beads in front of her. Because there would be no time, she had to single-handedly take care of the temple. She could sleep only for 2 or 3 hours or 4 hours a day. She used to chant while cutting vegetables by counting the beads. She was in a Mataji body. She was a Mataji. And she basically had such amazing influence on so many devotees who came in touch with her. My spiritual master at some point even instructed us after her departure to somehow or the other glorify her. And we all used to have a picture of her in our altar so that she had such a powerful influence on us. So the point I'm trying to make is that she was not disadvantaged by being in a woman's body. There was no disadvantage. She was an inspiration for generations of both male and female devotees. She had already attained higher stages of consciousness. So regardless, we are on the right path. We don't have to worry about the body. Any other question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, this is a small doubt. Like now, from this Yudhishthira's family, almost everybody is saved. Like especially Arjuna is saved by Krishna. Parshad Maharaj is saved by Krishna, but except Abhimanyu, who is also from the same family. So when I read about Abhimanyu, I read so many stories. Like one is he is an asura in the previous life who had a problem with Lord Krishna, or he is the son of a moon and who can be departed from the moon only for 16 years, like that. But is there any actual mentioning of Abhimanyu in Bhagavatam, Prabhu? Like why he
To
is
my knowledge,
Krishna?
yeah, sure. Sure. To my knowledge, I haven't come across, but I can check for you and we can talk about it. I can send the reply on WhatsApp.
Okay, because he is the only one, I think, in the whole family. Who is
No,
actually
not only him.
okay.
All the children of the Pandavas. All the children of the Pandavas.
Okay,
All the sons, yeah, all the sons of Draupadi and Abhimanyu. That entire generation was gone.
okay.
Yeah. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Haribol?
Well, my question is just to clarify, really, if we're not progressing in Krishna consciousness, is the problem a lack of sincerity and just a lack of like our efforts? We're not doing enough and we're expecting such a lofty goal. Just want to clarify what the reasoning behind it is.
The first point is we need to see what is progress. We need to attest to what is progress. We need to set the benchmark based on understanding what is considered to be progress. What is considered to be progress is that we have 5 foundational principles or 5 foundational aspects of Krishna consciousness that can be examined. One of the first foundational principles is there has to be a desire for sadhu sangha, where we are really desiring the association of devotees who can inspire us. That is sadhu sangha. Sadhu means someone who is completely dependent on nama. Someone who is so dependent on Krishna's nama that they are being maintained by Krishna's nama, that they have the ability to share that particular faith with others. Now, that desire to associate with sadhus is one benchmark. We should see if our practice increases our desire for association, month after month or periodically. We should observe our interest in chanting. Are we chanting with interest, or has it become a chore? Are we just kind of going through the grind, or are we being more enthusiastic about chanting? These are very good ways to calibrate, because it's quite discernible. It is not covered. It is not some lofty process where we can't see it. You can see all of this. So you can see if you are really motivated to chant, and you could take that clearly. Yeah, if your chanting has improved or has it deaccelerated over the past 6 months is a matter of knowledge. If you're sincere, you can determine that. The third would be, have I developed an interest and an inkling and very deep interest in wanting to listen to Srimad Bhagavatam? Am I wanting to listen to Srimad Bhagavatam? Am I wanting to read Srimad Bhagavatam? Am I wanting to live Srimad Bhagavatam, where I'm ingraining the principles and making an attempt to change my life to the extent to which it fits in with what the description of the Bhagavatam is? All of these basically are clear benchmarks which are observable if one is sincere. So am I interested in reading Am I interested in associating for the motivation of wanting to improve? Am I interested in chanting? Am I interested in wanting to basically not be attracted to things which are disconnected from Krishna and wanting to be attracted to things that are connected to Krishna? Yeah? Am I still interested in that particular rock band which I used to love 5 years back, or 10 years back, or 20 years back? I'm just giving you a benchmark. Does it really excite me? Am I wanting that association? Am I wanting to go and plug into the pleasures that I've been experiencing, much before I came into Krishna consciousness? Or has that changed? Have I modified it? So these are benchmarks. So what I'm saying is, first we need to determine where we are based on evolution and improvements in this particular area, which are quite measurable. Yeah, you can calibrate yourself. Now, the second point is in terms of sincerity and so on. The sincerity is to be able to evaluate all of this sincerely. Because Krishna consciousness is not religion. It is not religion. In religion, you can have motivations other than serving Krishna, and you can get away with it. In Krishna consciousness, we are wanting to serve Krishna. So you really can't say that I can go with a partial representation of that motivation. Yeah, it would just be a partial representation. Krishna can see through it because we are wanting to hold his hands. We're wanting to hug him. Practically, we're wanting this association with the Supreme Lord in such a manner which is almost impossible for the great sages even. But that gift has been given to us by Lord Nityananda Ram. So the point I'm trying to make is that we can't cheat our way through. So yes, sincerity is absolutely required. And what is a good representation of sincerity is for us to evaluate our motivations in all the areas that are important and see if these motivations are improving or they're not improving. If they're not improving, then we need some accountability. We need to sit and see what's going wrong. We need to see where the problems are. Are we still exposed to our previous habits? Are we still kind of struggling with all of the things that we were struggling with? Which is not a problem because all of us struggle at different stages. Sometimes it is so subtle at the higher stages that you wouldn't be able to recognize where your attachments are. Yeah, and it can still be a problem, but Krishna goes and puts you through certain challenges so that you can come out of it. So the point I'm trying to make is that it's all very measurable. It's not rocket science in terms of, it's not rocket science in the perspective that it's not an impossible goal. And it is not vague, it's clear. So sincerity, yes, absolutely. I hope this addressed your question. Any other question or comment?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I just want to know, like the difference between chanting on clicker and tulsi bead, because nowadays I started like, I don't know, I'm taking some. I feel like chanting on tulsi bead is very good, but somehow like I'm not doing it. I'm doing it on clicker because like offensive chanting, like I want to finish my rounds instead of not doing the round. I just want to do it even though I get time still, like, so I just want to, just for my benefit, like, so I should be serious in chanting on tulsi bead.
See, the more effort you put in before beginning the process of chanting, the greater would be the benefit. So in that sense, if one were to, for example, get up, have, make all the arrangements, sit down and chant, and then, give a certain amount of time exclusively for chanting, where every day you will just do that during that particular time, it's going to have its proper effect. So having said that, what I'm saying is chanting with tulsi beads at a certain time as recommended by Shastra and doing it every day consistently and being surrendered absolutely would be more beneficial than being casual about it. Coming in touch with Tulsi Maharani while we chant is essential. It's extraordinarily important. The process of transformation requires mercy and blessing. So that's why Tulsi Maharani gives us those blessings. It doesn't mean that if we chant using a neem bead or chant using a set of beads which are wooden, you wouldn't be able to do it. If there's sincere endeavor, you still would be able to make progress. The point I'm just trying to make is, if we have time and if we have the means, doing it according to Shastric principles would yield good results. If you don't have the time and you still want to complete your rounds, which is a priority, using the clicker and computing your rounds is also perfectly fine. It is better than not doing it. So don't wait for a day when, oh, I'm not doing it right today, so I'm just going to wait for a day when I can have time and I would be able to do it. It's better for us to chant now, even though under certain unfavorable circumstances, such as we might be in a hurry, we might be in this, we might be in that. It's better for us to chant now because it is chanting which is going to take us to a process and a position where we can benefit from as well.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
Sure. Any other question or comment? Okay, so there aren't any questions. If there are questions, please do write to WhatsApp. I'll be very happy to reply. And we would take it again the following week. The following week is going to be chapter 13 of the first canto. So please do take time and read the first canto, chapter 13. It would assist us as we would be able to, better understand where to go. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.